paying attention to organizational culture when it's too late, when you start noticing like toxic behaviors and counterproductive habits and ways of working, and then people want to start working on organizational culture, which isn't impossible, but it's just so much better to get it right from the get-go. So if you're still a fairly small organization or a young organization, it's absolutely I think fundamental to get your organizational culture right. So yeah,
and I think that organizational culture touches upon many topics, right? So it's not, many people might think that it's only about the biases and this sort of thing, but I think it's also about the efficiency operations. I mean, I have a remote team, and I won't lie to you, it can be a bit challenging. People have their own way of working. And what does culture mean in this setting, right? Does it mean that we all have to align behind one thing? Does it mean that we also have to understand each person's uniqueness and what they're trying to achieve through their role? I mean, it's many, many things, right?
Well, the way that I approach organizational culture and the way I'm going to present it through the course of this series, obviously we're not going to get to everything in 1 hour. People have written entire book series about organizational culture, but the way I approach it is also multi-leveled. Organizational culture isn't just one thing. It's various things, and those things stretch from the most foundational things like the values of the organization, all the way to its daily practices and procedures. So it's a fairly complex and also intricate concept.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think with everything that involves the human factor, at least I've personally observed an interesting phenomenon that everyone has an opinion. All the opinions are half right, but none of them are spot on. And there are many caveats, as in, maybe something applies in a certain culture, in a certain country, or for organizations of a certain type, it doesn't apply somewhere else. So it's not like there's some kind of master handbook of 20 pages and you just go with this,
No, for sure. So in terms of that, and it'll come through in my presentation as well, is because there's so many different opinions, and not even if it's like, properly researched, whatever the issue is that you're discussing, I try to, as far as I can possibly can, use peer-reviewed research or official reports with validated statistics, without getting too bogged down in the theory. We want to, especially with this series, we wanted to make it as practical as possible, but still have it be properly situated within sound theory and stats, so that we know we're doing the best possible thing that we can. It's not just an opinion.
I guess this is key, right? Because when we're talking about psychology, interestingly enough, my first degree was in psychology before I moved to AI and data science. And I think it's very easy to fall into the trap of anecdotal evidence, anecdotal anything, which is fine. I mean, knowledge always starts anecdotally, right? It starts with some random observation. But I guess many people fall into the trap of generalizing far beyond that. And this is where research can really help. But the way I think now we have quite a few participants. So I was thinking, we can start 5 minutes, usually, because it's 5 p.m. in the UK, where most of our audience is. We normally see 1 people joining after another this time, as people are wrapping up their meetings. I'm not sure whether any people from our audience that'd like to maybe introduce themselves and explain what has motivated them to join this session, because this could also help drive the Q&A and the subsequent session of this series, because that's a series we're going to run for events.
I can take the lead. Hi, very good afternoon or good time of the day, wherever in the world you are. My name is Rakesh Mattu. I work for Accenture in the UK, and I've been actually moving between very large, I would call as big tech, and startups. Before joining Accenture, I
Mhm.
was working for an innovative AI startup in the UK, and I would like I have seen like different cultures in different organizations, and I would like to kind of understand like how does culture impact like the productivity in a big tech or in a startup. Maybe sometimes kind of I have changed jobs because like again for the cultural reasons. It's not it's like it's one of the major causes of employee churn as well in tech organizations. So if anyone has a point of view on that, I would like to know that also. Yeah. So I live in Reading in the UK at the moment, just working out of my garage at the moment.
Thanks for that.
Hi, I'd like to introduce myself. I'm Emma Blalock. I'm in the UK as well, in Suffolk, and I work for a consulting company called Rocker. My background is I've worked in some large technology companies like Amazon and Sony, and I've also worked at startups as well, so an in-between. And I guess lots of interesting questions for this session, but one of the things I'm very passionate about and excited about is understanding how culture changes as companies scale up from that startup to the next stage, and how do we keep the elements that are essential in that startup phase, that innovation, that that flexibility, that agileness as you grow as a company. So that's really a key area I'm interested in. Thank you.
Mhm.
Thanks for that.
It's great to get like people with different perspectives, like corporate, startup. I think organizational culture touches upon many aspects. So I think it's good to have this breadth, right, Cliff?
Yeah, for sure.
Anyone else who would like to say why, what motivated them to join this session?
Hi, I'd like to go if that's okay. My name is Jeremy Jacob. I'm actually in New York. So it's 12 noon for me right now, lunchtime, while everyone in the UK is kind of winding down for their day, I'm sure. I am the co-founder and CEO of Speedy Sticks, which is a concierge healthcare company. We are a New York-based company, and we have operations in several states here in the United States. The reason that I'm here is, I think, similar to what some of the other individuals had said, which was really just to learn how culture impacts a company and how it changes as a company grows. My company, we actually just passed our 1-year anniversary, which I'm very excited about. And
Congratulations.
we're continuing to grow. Thank you so much. And we're just continuing to grow and continuing to scale up, looking for the right talent, making sure that our back-end office workers are getting along together. And I think part of that, my responsibility really is just to make sure that collaboration really is happening, and that culture is conducive to better productivity, whatever that means, whether it's something as simple as, I don't know, meeting up for coffee one afternoon, or probably like, I don't know, playing classical music in the office or something like that. But really just anything that, whatever culture means, it's a little different for everybody. But, I think that it's very important for anyone that's working together, any two people or more that work together, to have a positive environment where they can, kind of just be themselves. At the end of the day, I believe we're not robots. We're all human beings. We all have our flaws. And that's sort of, I think, what makes a culture unique. And every company is different in that sense, because everyone has a different background. And when they come together, it's kind of like creating a separate body. So that's kind of why I'm here, is just to maybe hear some other people's opinions on what culture really means, and possibly some steps that I can possibly learn from some of you. I'm a fairly new entrepreneur. I think, some of you have mentioned that you've had other companies in the past, and, my company is just 1 year old. We're a little baby. But I'm here to sort of just maybe hear some things from other intelligent people about what culture is, and maybe help me to make some, better decisions as my company continues to grow.
Welcome. Thanks.
Thank you.
Excellent. Great. So thanks everyone for introducing themselves, and it's great to see that we have a blend of people from different geographies, different backgrounds. I think I'm going to kick this presentation off, so we make sure we're on time. I'll do a quick 5-minute intro, and then Cliff is going to take the stage. Thanks everyone for coming here. A few words about the Tesseract Academy that is hosting this event. Our goal is to help leaders better understand data science and technology, well, technology in general, but with a strong focus on data science, AI, as well as blockchain. And we help leaders not only understand data science and AI, but also we help businesses grow through the use of these technologies. And the Tesseract Academy was really born out of an observation that impact in the world of technology, and not just in technology, impact through technology in pretty much any vertical doesn't necessarily come only through the implementation of technology, but through the understanding of technology, right? And this is something that I personally realized early on, and I decided to dedicate a good chunk of my career to explaining how technology can be used to people who have no intention of becoming technologists themselves, but they have to work with technology. And here are some of the solo entrepreneurs that we worked with, as well as big organizations, right? So the Tesseract Academy has a wide network of partners and many case studies ranging from solo entrepreneurs to bigger companies like Vodafone, British Land, etc. So me personally, my name is Stelios. My full name is Stelianos, but you can call me Stelios. I identify with the label of a data scientist. I have more than 10 years of experience in machine learning and AI. And I'm also a data science advisor at London Business School, at UCL. And I've also written up a book on the topic of data science, which is an introductory textbook to those who have no technical skills and they want to use data science in their business. More than happy to share this with you. I'm gonna share a link later on. So today we have the chance to have Cliff Lewis, who is a principal psychologist at LBVC. I'm also going to be copying and pasting all these contact details on Zoom for anyone who wants to get in touch with Cliff. And Cliff is going to, today, and then there are going to be 3 more sessions that are going to follow up, he's going to talk about organizational culture, which, as you can understand, it's a vast topic, right? So we had 3 people introduce themselves, and obviously the motivations and the goals of each individual are different. So one person comes from the corporate world, another person was from the startups and the scale-up world. So I believe that everyone understands that it is a very important topic, and it's a topic that touches many aspects of business, and can also impact its growth. And I'm really looking forward to Cliff's presentation. As I mentioned, this is a series, so there are going to be a few more events that are going to follow, and I'm going to be sharing all these links on Zoom in the next minute. So now I'm going to stop sharing my screen, and I will enable, multiple screen sharing is enabled. So Cliff, the stage is yours.
Thanks, Stelios. Let me just quickly find this to share. Cool. Can I just get a confirmation? Can everyone see my screen in the presentation? Yes?
Yeah, I can see the screen.
Okay. Yeah. Okay, great. So thanks everyone for joining. I'm very glad that we just had a quick chat before, chatting about expectations and what everyone would like to learn. As Stelios said, I am an industrial psychologist, so I work with various concepts, one of which is organizational culture. And based on, I made a little list of what everyone said in terms of what they want to learn. And so I just, from the get-go, I just want to make sure that we manage our expectations. We will definitely be talking about how organizational culture is different for different contexts, for different people, how organizational culture changes, what were some of the other things, how organizational culture impacts performance. We're going to touch on all of these, but we're not going to touch on all of these within this one session. Those of you who's had contact or maybe read up on organizational culture might know that there's books and books and books and articles on organizational culture. So we'll be addressing certain aspects of organizational culture today, and then building on that, the second session and the third session, and the fourth session is going to be really, really practical, where we will actually be building, and the last session will also be quite longer, and we'll be building usable, practical plans for our own organizations. So with that said, let me get into, there we go. Okay, so I just need to, I think, minimize this so I can see. So this is just also what I just mentioned in terms of that it's a series, and we won't be discussing every single aspect that you might be interested in about organizational culture. So we'll start today with, as the title of the session says, what is organizational culture and what is it not? Then when we progress to the next session, we'll be looking at how to measure organizational culture, so different models of measuring and understanding organizational culture, because there's many. I will be discussing the most salient ones, the most popular ones that's used in academia, but as well as in practice. And then we will be going through critical aspects of organizational culture in tech, specifically practical applications in the third session. And then, as I said, the fourth session will be a hackathon where we will be building actual cultural, we will be auditing our organizational culture as is and building plans for improving that in the future. So now, for those of you who maybe have a mobile device, we're gonna have some engagement now, and you can either go onto a different tab other than the one that you're watching this presentation on, log into menti.com and then enter that code. Or if you've got a mobile device, you can scan that QR code and then just log into don't close this tab that you are watching this presentation on, just open a separate one. And then I'm going to ask for you to just answer a question. I just need to find, sorry, just bear with me.
Maybe we can address questions towards the end, because I'm sure people will be also asking questions during the presentation.
Oh, this is sorry. This isn't a question. This is a Menti, a poll. I was supposed to be able to see it, but I don't know how to. Sorry, just bear with me. Let me do that. Cool. There we go. I've got, here we go. So the question is, how confident are you that you know what organizational culture is? I've got 3 responses that says not so confident. Is there anyone else who maybe wants to add to that? 4, not so confident. Celios, how many people are we in the session?
13, including us.
13, okay, there's 5.
I would say I'm not so confident as well.
Okay. So there's 2 options. I'm confident, not so confident. So far we've only got not so confident. Half of the group has responded. I'm gonna give it going once, going twice, last option or last chance. There we go. Okay, cool. So for those of you who said that, who engaged with this, said you are not so confident. So, okay. Stelios, can you see my presentation again?
I'm still seeing menti.com, the Menti meeting.
Oh dear. I'm going to share my desktop instead. There we go.
Yes, that's okay.
Okay, so the question I posed was, are you confident with your understanding of what organizational culture is? I'm not surprised that everyone that answered actually said they're not that confident. So as I mentioned at the beginning, there are a lot of different approaches. And as you can see from the first citation that I have there is from like the 80s. So it's quite a long time ago. People have been talking about organizational culture. And so this is just to give you an idea of how broad the concept actually is. But even though it is broad, there are certain commonalities. So the first one is that organizational culture is a complex, a set of complex social structures built on varying degrees of shared meaning. And then a little bit more recently, in 2007, it's a complex system of relational social processes mediated by powerful symbolic representation. So still with the meaning, but here we're introducing the idea of symbolic representations, which is quite important. As we carry on with the presentation series, I will talk about symbolic representation quite often. Then even more recently, there's a definition, organizational culture as a framework for collective negotiation, co-creation of meaning through dialogue and interaction. So clearly what comes through here is the idea of meaning, how meaning is created through relationships, and then how that is represented. And then the last one there is shared beliefs and meaning necessary for continued coordination, action among human interaction. So that last one makes it a little bit more practical. So basically what it is saying is, if we as a group of people don't have some kind of shared meaning or shared understanding of what it means to be part of an organization, and have some kind of symbolic representation of that, and I'll get to what symbolic representation actually means, then it's going to be difficult to work together as a group. So all four of these definitions, they're quite different, but they all touch on various important aspects of organizational culture. So shared meaning, the representation of that meaning, the co-creation of that meaning through relationships, and then the importance of all of that, the meaning, the relationships, the co-creation of meaning, in order for us to continue with coordinated action, because we're not just everyone just doing their own thing. If you're part of an organization, you do things towards a specific goal. Otherwise, it would just be chaos. So while there are a lot of definitions about what organizational culture is, there's also a bunch of things that are sometimes used interchangeably, discussed as organizational culture. So at this point now, I've offered you a few definitions, and I've identified a few key points as to what organizational culture entails. So now I just quickly also want to ask for engagement. Hopefully this switch between Menti and my presentation will go smoother since I'm sharing my desktop. But again, if you're using a mobile device, you can scan the QR code, or if you're on a different tab, just go to Menti and then type in that. It's the same exact code. And then that's not the right one.
We have a person who's very confident. We missed this.
one person was confident. Okay, great. So now you should have 4 options, and I want to know which of the following concepts are the same as organizational culture. And you can vote or click or select all 4, one of them, 2 of them, none of them. Okay, so organizational climate, we've got 1. 2 for climate, 2 for identity. Anyone else? I assume that there we go. The silence is that people are thinking, which I'm happy if that is the case. I just don't want to pause on it for too long, but I'm going to give it like another minute if you want to look through it. So the four options, just again, it's national culture, organizational structure, organizational identity, and organizational climate. So we've got nothing for national culture. So we're saying that's not the same. We're saying it's not the same as organizational structure, but some people believe it might be the same as organizational identity and climate. Right, so 4 people voted. Going once, going twice, last time. Oh, one more, okay. We've got a national culture as well. No one else? Cool. So that is a trick question because the correct answer is organizational culture is none of the above. It is not national culture, it is not organizational structure, nor is it organizational identity or climate. Let's go back to the presentation. So, organizational culture, as we've seen through the various definitions that I offered, it's got to do with shared meaning. It's multi-level, and with the multi-level, we will get to when we talk about the actual models for examining organizational cultures. Is just maybe at this point, just briefly, organizational culture is multi-level because it starts with the most basic foundation, as in your worldview, how you and your employees experience the world around you, what lens you see it through. It's organizational culture is part of your organizational infrastructure, so your processes, your systems, and then day-to-day practices, what you wear, how you talk to each other. All of these different levels, from the more basic, the more abstract, to the actual tangible day-to-day activities. Organizational culture permeates all of that. And then, of course, it affects all aspects of organizational life. The related concepts I thought would be good to point out, and I hope no one feels affronted by the fact that I asked you a trick question, is because organizational culture is so broad, and I think we've already established that. I think it's very important that we differentiate it from other related concepts. So just briefly, national culture is something that most people would probably be familiar with. So it's got to do with how we as a nation, or as a specific geographical group of people, how we navigate life. Our practices, our beliefs is very similar to organizational culture, but it goes beyond the organization. It's a larger group of people. There is, when we get to our models for organizational culture, you will see that some scholars assume or posit that if your organization is situated within a specific geographical area, then the organizational culture will mirror the national culture where it is embedded. That's not necessarily always the case, but there is scientific evidence for that, and we will touch on that. Then organizational structure is not the same as organizational culture. Organizational structure is actually a manifestation of your culture. So the way that your organizational culture will determine how your business is structured. So everything from how we communicate, to how we quality control, to how we discipline, promote, those structures will be a manifestation, but not culture in itself. Then organizational identity is also a manifestation of organizational culture at a very superficial level. Structure is a little bit deeper. Identity is a little bit more superficial. So slogans, logos, things that we attach meaning to, but not at a very deep level, that doesn't necessarily direct thought patterns or behaviors, but represents how we perceive ourselves to be part of an organization. Then climate has got to do with is probably the least associated with organizational culture, because climate has got to do with the expectations of people or employees, and to what extent they are satisfied or dissatisfied with their organizational life. So things like salary, time off, rewards, recognition. If expectations are met, you typically have a positive organizational climate. If expectations aren't met, then it's a negative climate. So it's not really got to do with stuff that we've already mentioned, like shared meaning and things like that. Does someone want to add something? Oh, I thought someone maybe wanted to add something. Right. So that is the difference between organizational culture and related concepts. So it's not national or structure or identity or climate.
I had a quick question. Is
Sure.
identity the same as organizational brand?
Yes, I have to admit that I am not an expert on organizational branding, but what I do know is that, especially when you're talking about recruitment and selection, often the employer brand comes up, and typically, if you want to attract the best talent, then you want to position that branding as something that is valuable and attractive to potential candidates. And that would be, yes, although the employer brand is focused on what the organization wants to put out, the message that they want to put out, and organizational identity is that, but also how that is internalized by the employees as well. So where identity is like both, you know, organization, management, employees, brand is more, you know, just what the top management wants to put out there. Does that answer your question?
Got it. Yeah, thank you so much. Thanks.
Cool. Right, and this is the last one, I promise. I do like engagement, and since we're not in a room together, this is the only way I can get you to engage with me. So the last Menti that you have to fill in, either scan or go to Menti and fill in that same code. And our question, oopsie. Right, so the next one is a word cloud. I would like you to give me your thoughts on what you think organizational culture, why organizational culture is important for specifically tech companies. Up to this point, we've spoken about general things. What is organizational culture by definition? What is it not? But now let's think about, why does organizational culture matter for you or your tech company? Any phrase or word that you think might be applicable? I think you're able to put 3 or 4. Productivity, good. Don't leave me hanging. Yay, okay, more people. Working style, collaboration, team identity, good. Just check how we're doing for time. Oh, okay, now we're still good for time. No one else? Only 2 people gave us input. There we go. Right, behaviors for sure. Common purpose, yes. Shared values. Okay, maybe we should then continue. Oh, more. What did we get? Common purpose, shared values, collaboration, productivity. Using new tech. Oh, okay, yeah. Using new tech. I'm assuming the argument there is if your organizational culture is not conducive to it, people might be resistant to using new technology.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Good. So, okay, 4 people have given us input, going once, going twice. We're going back to the presentation. Okay, promise that was the last exam. Right. Okay, so now we've chatted about organizational culture being about shared meaning, being a way for people to make meaning of what is happening around them, and to then in a coherent manner have directed activity so that we don't all scatter and do everything, everyone do their own thing. But why is that important for why is organizational culture important for tech specifically? So I've scoured the literature and I've found some very recent studies. These are all empirical studies. None of these are theoretical pieces. They're all based on actual real live recent research. And so the first thing is internationalization of new ventures. So quite a few of you, based on what I heard in the beginning when we were introducing ourselves, either are in new ventures or have experience with new ventures. And I think, especially now with since the pandemic and since the borders are slowly falling away with us. I mean, even us in this session, I'm in South Africa. We've got someone in America. There's some people from the UK. Stelios is in Bulgaria, I believe. No?
Well, right now I'm in Romania.
Romania.
But my base is
Romania.
in the UK, yeah.
So internationalization of new ventures is an important consideration for culture. The authors of that specific bullet that I put there, they found that if an organization's culture is not set up properly, and what that properly means will come, then internationalization is going to be very tricky. Stelios also mentioned that he has a remote team, and with having a remote team, there comes several challenges, and your organizational culture can either make your life easier or make it very hard. If you don't consider what impact your culture has on internationalization, remote teams, people working in different areas, different people working in different areas, and so forth. Then the second one is intra-firm and inter-firm collaboration to overcome barriers. In recent years in business, not just in technology, but in business in general, the name of the game has been collaboration. My work, I work as a consultant, so I think I'm probably exposed to it more than someone who's maybe attached to one specific organization, but collaboration is of the utmost importance. The days of departments or companies working in a siloed fashion, working by themselves, those days are just over. Even this presentation, I'm from a company called LBBC. I'm in South Africa. Stelios is in the UK, and he has a data science company. So, and we're collaborating on this project together, on this lecture series. So organizational culture either facilitates collaboration, both within your firm or with outside partners, whether that be other businesses or government or NGOs, whatever your collaboration needs to be to overcome specific barriers, your culture needs to be conducive for that. Then innovation, that's not really a surprise. If you are working in tech, you typically offer a service or a product that is innovative. And if you want to continue to innovate, your culture needs to be conducive to that. If you're, and I think that came up definitely in the word cloud as well. If your culture is risk averse, does not allow for people to take chances, to propose new ideas and to try them out, then innovation just simply will not happen. And this is not something that you put in place once and it just works. Innovation, an organizational culture that is conducive to innovation is a work in progress. It needs constant maintenance. And then motivation. And now I mentioned earlier when we were talking about what the definition is and what the components are of organizational culture, I mentioned that it's multi-leveled. So values, infrastructure, and then day-to-day practices. So the thing with motivation and with this specific author that I cite is they did a study with Google. And when people talk about organizational culture, specifically organizational culture in tech, Google, Facebook, these are the names that very often pop up. And when someone says, and I don't know if you are very familiar with Google and their practices and their culture, you might think differently. But I think the average Joe on the street would say, oh yeah, Google's culture is very sort of people-centric, laid back, progressive. But what this scholar Song 2020 found was that yes, Google is actually all of these things, but it's only at the surface level. So they're very progressive and people-centered and laid back and all of that at the surface level. But when you dig a bit deeper into the processes and the values and the beliefs and the ideologies that underpin all of that, they're actually not. They're actually just as bureaucratic, as I don't want to say stagnant, but they're not as progressive as one might think. And if that is not the case, if your organizational culture is not congruent all the way from the bottom all the way to the top, then it is going to affect your motivation because people get conflicting messages, and that is quite demotivating. So the importance of organizational culture in tech is internationalization, intra-firm and inter-firm collaborations, innovation, and then motivation as well. So that brings us to the end of this session. Apart from the Q&A, definitely I made sure that I don't bombard you with too much information so that we still have time for Q&A. But based on what we discussed earlier, what the attendees mentioned are your expectations, I want to make sure that you understand that this is definitely a work in progress and a lecture series. We cannot possibly do everything in one session. So today was just an introduction in terms of what organizational culture is and differentiating it from other concepts. So if you look at the timeline, just after between 1 and 2, in the next one, we will be talking about actual models that we use to understand and measure organizational culture, as well as selecting a model for measuring your own organizational culture. So we're going to look at specific models like some of you may have heard of the GLOBE project. They focus a lot on national culture and how that impacts the organizational culture. We're going to look at a model by a man called Edward Schein, which focuses on the 3 different levels of organizational culture: values, structures, and practices, or the symbolic meaning, the most superficial level. And then after that, we'll do the more practical, and then culminate in the capstone hackathon, which I'm very excited for. So hopefully this gave you a good taste without bombarding you with too much information, and makes you excited for the sessions to come up. And with that, these are the references. If you would like to consult some of these references, we're more than happy to share these with you. And our next session will be on the 29th of September, and that will specifically look at which models we can use to understand and manage organizational culture, because as the title says, if it's not tech if I can't measure it. We definitely can measure our organizational culture, and that will come in the next session. So with that, this is my contact details, which Stelios already shared, but now the floor is yours. Anyone has any questions, I'm happy to answer them. So I'm going to stop sharing and then just turn on my camera.
Perfect. Thank you, Cliff. This was very interesting. I made sure to share the links to the next sessions of the series. And I think there are a couple of questions which you might want to address.
Cool. So, where do I start? Okay, so first, plus these ones, next session. Oh, okay, this is nice. Can we have a copy of the charts? You mean the slides, Rakesh?
Yeah, that's what I meant, yeah.
Okay, cool. Yeah, sure. Stelios will make those available. And things you can do to maintain culture. Okay, so there's a lot of things that you can do to maintain culture, to build culture, to change culture, but that is unfortunately not a very easy or simple, there isn't a simple answer to that, but I can maybe summarize. So what you need to do, and we'll be doing this in the upcoming sessions. So what you need to do is, first off, you need to decide what your company's values are. How does that speak to the overall strategy of the organization? Where's the organization going, and what values will foster and promote and enable us? If we think back at one of the first definitions, is it's a way for us, it's a way for people to understand organizational life and then work together towards a certain goal. So we need to make sure that we put our values in place, that our values, ideologies, beliefs. Then the next step is to then have structures in place that enforce those beliefs. Because very, very frequent, the biggest issue that I have found with organizational culture is there's a disconnect between the 3 levels: the values, the infrastructure, and the practices. So if we want to maintain our culture, if we want to create culture, we have to make sure that there's alignment between all of those. And I will be, in the upcoming sessions, I will be taking you through some practical ways of doing that. What are some great books on building culture? I can share all my references with you. There's books, there's articles, there's some reports. Actually, Rakesh, was it you that said you work for Accenture?
Yeah, I did, yeah.
I actually reference one of the most recent reports that Accenture published. I didn't use it in today's session, but in one of the upcoming sessions, I actually reference one of their reports. So I've got a few reports, articles, and books that we can share with you that might be of assistance. And then
Cliff, just one book is fine. I mean, I know there's probably 1,000 you've probably read, and in terms of the question on maintaining culture. We do this school of life activity where it's kind of like a card game for building teamwork. And, I have 1,000 examples, but I'd rather hear them. You're an expert, you've got a PhD or whatever in this stuff. And so it's kind of really practical things we can be doing, away from, we have very strong values and behaviors in what we do as a business, but how do we reinforce these in a more fun or quasi-gamified way without spending a load of money and people thinking they're lame? The School of Life card game, which I know Facebook and a number of others, big tech use, but useful, but if people get bored of things. So it was more looking at very practical, fun things you can do away from work that reinforce culture and maintain it.
Thanks for clarifying. So the issue here is organizational culture is more than just activities. So you can have activities like the card game. I have to say I'm not familiar with the specific game. My approach to organizational culture has been acknowledging employees, but employees' activities like group activities or team building events. These aren't really things that build or maintain organizational culture. Organizational culture goes deeper than that. So yes, you can do activities and card games and whatever other gamification you want to do, but that's only at the symbolic level. So that's one level. If you want to make sure that your employees are aware of your values, if you have solid values, you need to make sure that your systems, your infrastructure that operationalize these values and ideologies, that is in place. And that's not really something that you can do through an interaction with employees in a kind of a team building setting. I don't know if that just raises more questions.
No, we've got, as I mentioned, we've got strong values, behaviors. We have an induction book. We have a brand book. We have all these things in place. They're cemented. They're reinforced every time we interact with people. Mm-hmm. We're just looking for ways of reinforcing them, but maybe this isn't the avenue to talk about those things.
I think when we get to the third session, I think that might be a little bit more clear, because there's some more foundational stuff that we need to cover before we jump into what we can do to cement our values.
Okay, anything.
Cool. Right. Yes, that's what I was thinking. Okay. Okay, that when we addressed, that was a trick question. The only way to win the game is to not play the game. I don't know what you meant there, Stelios. Okay, that's my contact details. Cool. I think that's it.
I can also post your contact details again. Give me a second. Dr. Cliff Lewis. Great. This was a very interesting session. Definitely covered a lot of ground. Next event is on the 29th. Apologies about the October event. I realized there was a back with Eventbrite and somehow the sales ended prematurely. Thank you, Simona. Glad you found this useful. Any more questions before we wrap up?
Thank you from my side. I think this has been a good introductory session. Yeah, I look forward to the next one. Yeah.
Great.
Perfect.
Steve, can I maybe just, Stephen, if you want to take this offline and discuss this further, I would love to discuss that with you. If you maybe want to send me an email, you can maybe then just give me a brief overview of the stuff that you have in place, because it does seem like you already have spent a lot of time and resources on your organizational culture already. So I'd love to discuss this with you more if you want to just pop me an email. Cool.
Perfect. Cool. Okay. Thanks, everyone. And we hope to see you in the next event of the series.
Thanks, everyone.
have a great evening or afternoon, depending on where you're based, and hopefully see you soon. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.